Yeah.
It's the home team here,
Yeah, well, let's call this meeting to order here. Waldeboro Planning Board. May 14, 2026. We have literally everybody here for the first time ever, I think. So we certainly have our quorum.
On the agenda, but everyone's here.
Yeah. Anyone have any adjustments to the agenda? Okay. No citizen comments, obviously. So let's dive into ordinance changes. What is this? I assume this is from Mark.
Yeah. Some suggestions and things we wanted to talk through. About things that have come up recently.
Mark, you want to start with your list? You need to run out.
I was just gonna go get another document,
Okay.
so that has some suggestions. I forgot to print it out, so give me a second to print that and I'll be right back.
All right.
Oh, is this one about me?
Probably.
So you get.
What'd you do this time?
10.23.2.6. I got a shipping container delivered to my house the other day.
My neighbor's got one, it's
Not actually
huge.
about you.
Okay. It's just sitting right there.
I have a feeling that it is about, and I don't know for sure, but
It turns out they're much harder to move than I anticipated.
Yeah,
But I've got a plan.
no, I'll listen. Before I speak about that, but. So you're gonna plant beautiful flowers at the base of that sign, is that the?
The sign? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm building a big box of that.
Yeah, I
My
saw
wife
that, yeah.
wants all kinds of stuff.
No, it looks nice, it's gonna look beautiful when it's all done.
Yeah, I had to secure it better.
Gotta
That-
get through the soft ground phase.
That's, the spring, that whole field kind of drains into that corner where the new driveway is.
Right.
Is also where everything drains.
Yes,
So I put the sign right where. And the whole ground there just turns to
Goes-
liquid in the spring,
right.
so. I dug it out and put just,
well, as I drive to the Dunkin' Donuts daily in Damascotta, I check the progress on your sign.
I love
wait,
it.
wait,
It don't have too much of a life, but it's kind of the highlight of the day.
I know, I think Dunkin' Donuts news is about the biggest thing. Seeing regularly around.
The entire town of Waldeboro is waiting for bated breath. to open.
Yeah,
Seems that way.
Yeah.
All right. What, after we get through Mark's list here, I was thinking about talking about the large and small subdivision conversation that we've been having again or earlier.
stormwater management.
Yeah,
We
and
didn't say
that's so I'm sort of curious to hear what Bobby Young and I forget the other person's name. What they came up with from Gartley and Borsky for the stormwater.
Do you mean Ryan?
I don't remember his name.
Ryan O'Donnell?
Yeah, that's probably him.
For where?
The subdivision out in Winslow's Mills.
Yeah, I drove by there the other day and I think it's gonna end up just as I thought it was gonna end up, because one of those driveways they have
Thank
coming down, it's really steep.
Yeah,
It comes right down into the road and in a spot that would be really treacherous if water's washing down across that road or ice is
Yeah,
there.
totally.
It's gonna be a problem.
well, just even without that, even just a snowstorm.
Right.
It's.
Well, if they put up some erosion control.
Yeah,
I mean, I think we left that buyer beware or something, because. And we weren't gonna,
All right.
we weren't gonna force them.
They're shy, so you guys look at that.
One under here,
Oh,
there are a few there.
Oh, well, I guess
Responsible.
we should
Thank
talk
you.
about the little meeting that we had after the meeting. Yeah, so they wound up providing some sort of a stormwater. They asked to meet with me and Kate and they brought Oh, I can't think of the guy's name, apparently Endorsky, Dusty, I was gonna say Rusty, and that was wrong. And another engineer from Gartley and Dorsey to try to figure out what exactly it was that we were asking for. And so we had a whole conversation about that. And then I assume that they came up with something to fulfill the requirement.
They presented a plan on the plans, they had where the stormwater runs now. And then a summary of mitigation that they're gonna do when they put in the driveway.
Oh, fantastic. Okay,
Just a written sort of. you know,
Well, the driveway they have in, the one driveway they put in, it's got a really steep slope to it coming into the road.
Right to the road.
And now granted, it's only a rough driveways here, but I don't know what they're gonna do to, to prevent water from barreling down that driveway and into the road. I mean, you know, maybe they've got a plan. I'd like to see what that is. Did they submit one?
They didn't have a plan for they had a plan for where the water was now and then how they were preventing erosion as they built the driveways, but not for after the driveways were
Oh, well,
built, because they don't know what the water's gonna do until they build the driveways.
well, I can tell you what the water's
Exactly where we
gonna, it's gonna
landed
come down that driveway like a bad hell. You just go look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, the erosion control during the building of the driveways is not, I mean, is important too, but it's the afterwards. It's the
Yeah,
net result of it is really kind of key.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, the one driveway, what I wasn't sure about, because I mean, my thoughts were just a car flying into the road because you can't stop at the bottom of the
well, there's
winter.
that too. I mean.
But that aside, it looks to me like, I mean, they've moved a little bit of earth, but they've mostly cleared, and I wonder if they're gonna, you know, adjust the slope of that driveway a little bit. I have no idea.
Well, the first driveway you come to, which is the only one that's sort of quasi finished, really roughed out in a real way,
Right,
is bad. I mean, the other ones actually get, or the slope gets reduced as you go along the road there, but the
Right.
first one is really steep.
yeah. No, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I'm kind of surprised.
Well, yeah, it's not a piece of property I would buy for myself with that, if that were the driveway, because.
So, but so if they finish that driveway and it doesn't, so what's the code there? So if it doesn't meet some standard, I mean, you know, how is that, who has the jurisdiction to go in there and say, this driveway is not good enough? Or is not properly done?
I mean, we have a driveway, a standard, how they have to build the driveways within our ordinance. That's the only.
Which brings me to my first point.
We're still not to say on driveway. so,
Okay, great segue.
But there is standards that they have to meet within our ordinance for building a driveway, a private road. Et cetera.
But does that standard deal with stormwater? Have you looked at that driveway, that first one that they built? One up Winslow Mills? You been up there?
No, no, I haven't been up there since
No.
they put the stakes out, so.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
you don't go to the
I
dump?
think they've actually, they've roughly widened one of them at this point.
I think they're on the third one.
Yeah, I was just by there on Monday, yeah.
but we have standards in there about the grade for. Driveways and roads and all that.
But nothing about stormwater?
Well, that goes hand in hand
Well,
to some extent. I mean, you can dome it and that water will shed.
right, you can do that, but.
It needs attention. I mean, that's the. At least.
I mean, shouldn't there be something in the code that actually specifies, and not just grade, but also about,
There is, section 9, I can give you it in just a second.
Yeah, so part of the problem here with this was that they came to us and said, we want to build this, we want to put in driveways. And then they came back and said, well, actually, we're not going to put in driveways, we don't know what we're gonna do. And so, since they said they don't have a plan to develop it, I said to them, well, then treat this just like you would any other stormwater management plan. do it for the development that you know about. So like, let's say you're gonna put in a 10-unit subdivision. You don't know how every lot is gonna wind up getting sloped after the houses get built, like, but you do know that there's gonna be a road in there, you know? And so do your stormwater based on what you know. That's what I said to them at this meeting. And so they're kind of like pretending like, oh, we don't know how we're gonna develop it, except now they're out there doing it. And so what they've done is basically sort of put this onto the building permit portion of the process instead of into the stormwater management plan, because they wanted to save money on the engineering fees. So I don't know that we necessarily handled this properly. I don't know what we would have done differently exactly, but I would love to see what Garley Dorsey came up with and how they're planning to deal with it, like maybe the answers in that document.
Yeah, that's good.
I can send that to you guys. It's not on this computer, but.
The stormwater management plan though comes up again as part of the building permit, correct?
Right.
Well,
That was what
it'll
we
be
had
too
said.
late at that point because the driveway will be in already.
But the problem is that it's gotta be over an acre before the stormwater kicks in. So when
Well,
you
it
do the
is. Those are
subdivision,
5-acre lots.
But the disturbed soil.
Yeah, it's the
Correct.
area of disturbance.
so if they're not disturbing greater than an acre,
Oh, sorry.
then they don't, it doesn't kick in at that point. So.
So
That's in our management, but or. maybe
no, that's a
State.
state law. It's Maine's a delegated state for the national DEP, and it's the national standards that get enforced by the Maine DEP. That's
And we can't make it become more conservative.
no, we absolutely could. We absolutely could.
Because in situations like that, a more conservative viewpoint has to be considered. Because.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the slope, because of the curve, because of the particular road. I mean, there's a whole host of things there that are an issue.
But aside from what's going on at this moment, there presumably is not gonna be much of any traffic in and out until somebody decides to build a house there, and then to Daniel's point, then they have to go through the whole permitting process, and that would cover everything, and I think that was our thinking anyway, when they were sitting in front of us, was all this would get sort of scooped into
Yeah,
the construction.
Well, that goes
building
back to the
permit.
buyer beware, because if someone buys that property, it's a driveway there, they're gonna assume, I think. Obviously incorrectly, that driveway is legal. That it meets the standards of the town when they buy the property, and the driveway's there because we've sanctioned it.
I'm not sure I would assume that because there's no building permit attached to it. You still have to get a building permit.
yeah.
They have a driveway permit though, correct?
Yes, they
No.
do.
They,
Through the state.
Yes.
Right, well, for the curb cut, but
the
not the,
state, that because the town deals with driveway permits on town roads and the state deals with driveway permits on state roads. So because that's a state road, they get Maine DOT permission. Maine DOT says, go ahead, they can put in the driveway, the town doesn't have any role in that, except for checking that they have the permit.
I have to agree with Eric here. I mean, if I had a buyer that was interested in that, I'd say, here's the driveway permit. Here's the subdivision plan. It's a vacant lot. You're good to go. Go get a building permit for a house. You're not gonna look at the driveway.
And
But-
9 and this might help, 9.2.12, low volume driveways. Skew angle, low volume driveways shall be two-way operation and shall intersect the road at an angle as nearly 90 degrees as the site limit, but in no case less than 60 degrees. Curb radius shall be between 5 feet and 15 feet with preferred radius of 10 feet. Driveway width, the minimum width of the driveway should be 12 feet. Those are the only conditions we have on private driveway.
well, and isn't this the state driveway permit? Tell me if I'm wrong, but this is just based on my experience in New Hampshire. When the state gave us permission to reopen a new entrance to campus, what all they were concerned about was visibility and the proximity of the opening to other curb cuts. There was no conversation whatsoever about anything other than that.
So Route 32, for instance, there are two different things that come into play. One, the state permits the actual entrance. And that basically applies to everything that is in their right of way from
Right.
32. And then everything outside of that is under our Article 9.
Right. So having the state permit just means you can have a curb cut here. It doesn't address anything beyond that. And except for referring them to us.
Like I know for instance, us, when we do for a town-owned road, they put in a permit, they stake it out. We then give the permit application to Public Works. Public Works Director goes out and does an inspection on it. He makes recommendation, vegetation removal or culvert size, length, all that other stuff that needs to be installed. And that's all done. And then code enforcement takes over as far as the width of the driveway and making sure that it meets the 12 feet.
So have they done that? Have they gone out?
No, because it's Route 32, which is a state road, so all those permits are through the state.
So they come out and look at the culvert, 'cause I don't even know.
Correct.
Whatever the culvert, that's all been done. We know that for a fact?
I don't know that for a fact, but I can tell you that before they can get a building permit, they have to have that submitted. So their state documentation has to be submitted to us prior to me issuing a building permit for them.
So
They-
we don't know if the state has inspected the work that's done to date at this point.
I don't know if the state has inspected any of the work on
What-
any
No, I
of these
don't think
places.
they do.
Well,
I think they come out if there's a problem. If nobody reports a problem, they don't check anything out.
Yeah, that's part of the subdivision application requirements is to have those in there. So we saw them when they applied for it. Yeah, we do have also, since we're talking about this, 9.2.7 it's called vertical alignment. And it's about how much grade you can have at the access point
Is that
of
something
the
that
driveway.
the town needs to regulate, or does that just make it a difficult piece of property?
It's come up a couple of times where it has been important. There was a subdivision that we had a couple of years ago out on Failures Corner Road. It was like 100 acres or something. They chopped it up into 9 or 10 lots. And like 3 of the lots were a cornfield that was like 6 or 8 feet lower than the road. And that was actually going to be a little bit of an issue. Like to develop those lots, you're gonna have to actually build up quite a bit
Yeah.
right at the edge of the road just to so that you wouldn't bottom out as you crested up over it
Yeah.
onto the road.
I mean, because I've certainly, been places where, if you go to the Hudson Valley or something where everything's built on the
Oh,
side of a mountain, it's just, your driveway sucks.
yeah, the rule here is literally just about the connection of the driveway to the road.
Yeah.
So what is?
It can be as steep as you want to make it, but at the road, it's
Yeah.
got to be flat, so you got a spot to
Well,
stop
is
and
that,
wait.
what is the grade level for that the road's supposed to be?
It says low volume, but it says an access point should be flat enough to prevent the dragging of any vehicle undercarriage. Low volume driveways shall slope upward or downward from the gutter line on a straight slope of 2% for at least 25 feet, followed by a slope of no greater than 10% for the next 50 feet.
Oh, well,
Maximum grade over the whole length shall not exceed 15%.
that driver won't qualify for under those standards.
But again, we don't know if they're finished yet, if they've just, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm actually agreeing with you, it's just, we don't know if they've gone too far beyond clearing trees at this point, because that's kind of what it looks like.
Brendan, are these the people where I was asking about the speeding?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just thinking, just if you do the physics and the trigonometry, if you have a line of sight and a too steep of an incline, or is there a safety issue that?
I think that's what this paragraph is trying to address.
Right.
Yeah, it's to make sure that like no matter how steep the driveway is, like the
When you get to the
the last 75 feet is not steep.
Oh,
You
well,
know,
The last
this driveway
70
comes like that, here's the road, and the driveway
Right.
comes down like that.
Right.
So
Okay.
there's nothing flat in that driveway.
Yeah. No, they may have to
Before it hits the
rework it.
Huh?
You know, I think that what they've put in there are just access roads at this point, because they've
Well,
just been
could be.
logging. the
That could be,
roads.
that's-
Right,
Like,
right.
And they have
I
cut
think
it
so.
down a little bit. There was like
Okay.
a little hill, they cut it down a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if it
Well, I
meets
guess- I
standards.
guess we have to-
Well, yeah, and again,
Hmm.
there's obviously still working out there, so it's hard to know.
But who would who would have jurisdiction over that? Not the code enforcement officer, right?
Yeah,
Well, no,
Or-
no.
Or the,
would-
whatever the right of way is for the state, and
Well-
that's changes with every road the state owns.
but like you said, outside of that right of way, that's your jurisdiction.
Yes.
You know, so like,
So if the driveway isn't built properly,
Correct,
you would be the one that would issue a violation.
correct. Well, technically, they would not get their certificate of occupancy until such time as all codes, including the land use ordinance, are taken care of. So
I thought there was an interim step. I thought it was state and then I thought there was a local.
there is.
Local, what is it called? The DOT, local DOT here in Wilbur.
There is local DOT, but usually all the entrance permits are done through the engineering department through the state. So it would come out of Augusta's office or our
I think it's
district.
Public Works, right?
Hmm?
Public
Public
Works.
Works.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
They don't-
yeah, anything with us is will through Public Works, like
Right,
Public
but,
Works.
and don't they weigh, at what point do they weigh in?
Only when it's our road, the entrance, and that's it.
Right, well, that's what, that's referring to this standard that
No,
Brendan just.
the public works would weigh in for the curb cut. If it's our road, the public works would
Oh,
weigh
but
in
it's
for
on
the
our
curb
road.
cut. And if it's a state road, the state weighs in for the curb cut. Anything beyond the curb cut would be Mark and the ordinance.
So the public works never would have any say, they're out of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said they weighed in at some point, you know.
Only on the entrances, you know.
In-
that are on town
on
roads.
town-
Town
But,
roads.
but there will presumably come a time when it, if all their plans go the way they want them to, that somebody's gonna wanna build something in there, and at which point that gives you the perfect opportunity to say, this doesn't meet code, the steepness. I mean, nobody's gonna be, except for this work that's going on initially, is gonna be going in and out of there. So the safety thing isn't really a thing until they start to build it.
I mean,
Right, they can, like what somebody had indicated before, they've got access points right now.
Right.
And they might have put the culverts in order to meet DOT, but they have no finished product on that driveway right now.
Right.
And that happens quite often.
can't we put public works in the middle of this? I mean, can't we make that a stipulation that after state and before they get their building permit, they have to pass mustered with the public works, and they can go in and check this out, so.
You could, but I think it's redundant because you could buy property and never build on it and never need a building permit.
Right, but see, but that's what I'm trying to avoid is before they actually sell the property, that actually has to meet the town standard. On top of the state standard, before it can be marketed
But it's,
as a buildable lot.
I mean, I think the point is that it's not finished. It's just roughed out at this point. And you can't get a building permit until it's finished, at which point all this will have to be met.
Well, okay, I mean, whatever, but I disagree with that. I think that they can't, I don't think they should be able to market it as a buildable lot. Until they have a driveway access to it that's legal.
A lot can be buildable though without a driveway.
Right.
If it meets, as long as it meets the standards to be a lot that could be built on. They don't have to have a driveway, they don't have to have a permit. You could sell it as a lot of land without a driveway permit at all.
Right.
As long as it's 200 feet wide and it's 1.87 acres, 80,000 square feet,
Right.
and it would pass for a perk
Well,
test.
yeah,
It's buildable.
right, that's true. I mean, I just,
Mark, what does that driveway look like right now at this moment in time? Is it, are they still,
he doesn't know, he hasn't seen it.
you haven't seen it?
No. No, they were in the process of getting access to it, but I mean, I don't remember seeing a finished product to.
Okay.
And I know that they moved, they had to go back to DOT because they moved one of the driveways, because they ran into ledge. So trying to get the angles and everything else, it wasn't
Do
working.
they have traffic going in and out of what they have now? You know? Cause I'm wondering. if-
Yes.
I mean,
Do
they-
you have traffic?
They've had trucks in there.
Yeah, they're logging it, so
Yeah.
it's.
Right.
They've
So-
roughed them in. It's not, I wouldn't call it a driveway. I'd call it a
Yeah,
pull off.
I see.
maybe.
Mark, do you ask for information about the slope of the driveway? Like
Not
you,
beforehand.
no,
No, usually I go and do the inspection and stuff like that to determine that. And then even that's, if I, if I felt that there was a question, then I would end up calling, Will and say, Will, how do you calculate the slope of this, is this gonna be? I would work with him on that.
yeah. I mean, I know you get a lot of crayon drawings for building permit applications, and like. It's sort of unfair to the person who's doing the building to find out after the fact that after they put in a driveway, like your driveway is not allowable. Because like it's like the way it meets the road is, unacceptable. So, yeah. It's
A lot of times, like contractors, a lot of times when they start these process, like those 4 lots, for instance. They don't want to sink a lot of money into the driveway
Yeah.
and the base and everything else because they're gonna have trucks coming and going for. Excavators for putting in the subsurface wastewater system and all the other stuff that they're gonna do and trucks ruining everything. So a lot of times they wait until, they're going to be doing a finished build in there before they're gonna, start putting efforts into that driveway.
Well, part of the state DEP erosion control rules are to put in a stabilized construction entrance. So
Right.
that's what should be in there right now, but instead it's just a mud pit. And the trucks are tracking mud out into the road.
Yep.
But
Oh, there's.
I totally understand. You wouldn't put in the finished driveway until, the very end of the project. Yeah, anyway. Well, the reason that I brought this up to talk about was as part of the, we had this whole round about should we be requiring the stormwater management plan or not on a small subdivision, or should we break out small subdivision into a separate category and have fewer requirements on it? I'm gathering from the conversation that we've had, and so we're sitting here talking about adding more and more requirements, that maybe we shouldn't even bother wasting our time on this, because it seems like there is a desire to have the stormwater management plan apply even to small subdivisions.
Yeah, I just. I just want the clarifying language. I mean, you can't. When I hear you say that, I'm hearing what's your plan for mitigation? And if you don't know what you're building, then you can't have a plan for mitigation. But you can have an analysis done. Which was what you had brought up, and I finally heard that one fateful meeting. And I think you should, because that does inform, can this be 10 building lots, or does it have to be 8 building lots, for example?
Right.
Because you can't manage stormwater sufficiently arbitrarily just cutting up a big hunk of land. You have to, so to that degree, I think that's a reasonable ask. It's certainly in a large one. I don't really object to it in a small one either. Because when they brought those maps in that night, there was that one, I think it was the second one in from town. That, he made, I asked him about it, and he made some comment about you can disrupt wetlands, like some percentage or something. I was a little vague about what he was talking about, but looking at the maps, it's like you're either gonna, cross what's identified on this map as a wetland, or what is a brook, a seasonal brook, seasonal, I can't say it, seasonal brook, or a
Yeah.
permanent brook. But I don't see any way to get a vehicle past that barrier based on these pictures. And so that's the kind of thing that
Yeah.
should have been part of the conversation on the front end.
I mean, if nothing else, it should be something that gets disclosed to a potential buyer. So
Right.
even if there is no plan for development, someone could look at this and say, oh, I'd buy lot number 6, except all the other lots are dumping all their stormwater into this lot,
Right.
So I think that's, it's certainly valuable, and I totally understand, this particular applicant's concern that this is adding an onerous level of cost doing the development.
Hmm.
But
Well,
it's too easy, I think, to find examples of
Yeah.
how not requiring this creates problems. And so like if Gartley and Dorsey, who I think is the only engineering firm locally that we've ever had in here, if they have a plan about how they're gonna treat this, I don't think that it's difficult to do. Like, they know how to do the calculations. They just want they wanted clarification about what to include in there. And I think that if like we make some clarifying changes to what we're asking for,
Right.
then, and any engineering firm can look at that and understand it and give us what.
and say, yeah, and to demonstrate to us that it is actually possible to have 4 lots that comply. There's
Yeah.
work that's gonna have to be done in the stormwater management thing, and when you want your building permit, then you're gonna have to have the mitigation plan, but it would certainly be nice to rule out, there's no way that you can get from Route 32 into that piece of property, the way the boundaries are drawn without having issues kind of.
What they said there at that meeting, which I thought was disturbing, was the woman, I don't remember, no, she was the realtor.
Bobby.
She
Oh,
said, oh, well, if we had to go to this extent, we have to put that much more money in to do this project, it won't be marketable anymore. So, it'll be too expensive. But that just pushes the cost down the pipe, a little bit. I mean, they don't want to put that money in because they don't, because then they'd have to sell the properties for so much more money and then they wouldn't no longer be marketable given what the market is. So that pushes the cost onto the consumer, right? So they get stuck with it, not knowing that cost that they didn't want to, that the developer didn't want to incur, that they want to have to incur. Again, this whole thing about buyer beware, I found that to be really objectionable because most buyers don't really have the savvy to understand what it is what's they're confronted with, particularly when it comes to something like that, because roads are expensive to build. They're thinking, oh, well, I have $100,000 to put into the house. Well, then you're gonna need another $50,000 put in the road, which they're not really figuring on. I mean, we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah.
Brandon,
John, yeah.
I just, something struck me, just in general. I'm for less regulations on everything. I mean, the state, we should not be regulated to have business people or developers or whatever. You shouldn't make them jump through a billion hoops if you don't have to. So at the very least, we should make these rules and crystal clear and succinct.
Yeah, I
And,
agree.
and just so, because Eric, you're talking about money, it comes down to money at times, right? Make it succinct, make it just the bare bones, so everybody knows where they are, they can plan a little bit ahead. But again, I'm just for, I'm a Jeffersonian, the government that governs least governs the best, and I think we gotta start, again, I'm long-winded on this, but I
Mhm.
believe in that. Make it easy for people to start a business or develop something, or, at the very least, we should help them by giving them a cogent outline to what it is that we require.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
talking
So
about-
you don't get surprised,
Right.
because
Yeah,
really where the cost is where you have to have this argument where there's all 10 of us like, is this required? Is this not required? Like,
exactly.
it's worth so much money. Like, it's a waste of time. Yeah.
But in this case, we're talking about public safety though. So the impact, whatever they want to do.
That would trump it. I agree with you there.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we changed the language to say that, the stormwater plan is required even if there's no development planned. The stormwater management, stormwater management plan should include any development that is planned for the lots. So like, if you're gonna put a driveway in, include the driveway in the stormwater management plan. I'm very curious to see what they came up with for a product to meet the requirement. And like the total cost of this is not, it's not a lot of money. They grab a bunch of publicly available information, they drop it onto their map, You know, it probably took one engineer less than a day to put this together, you know, you're talking about for this particular application, you know, it's probably you know, $2,000 to do the report. And you know, you split it across 4 lots, like you're talking about a fraction of 1% of the total cost of building this building, and you're providing a bunch of security, like it does provide value, like
Yeah.
maybe not to everybody,
Doesn't it
but-
add value to the lot?
it absolutely
Because
does.
now this plan has been done.
Right, and and the
can
buyer
pass
has
that.
security of knowing that they're not gonna have a problem in the future, you know, like all the people over by Bear Hill who have they're always there's water in the street, there's water in everybody's backyards, and like managing that, like if we were having this conversation 50 years ago before any of those places got built or whatever, like people would be in a better situation there, you know? So I think that I think it's worthwhile, but I agree with your point, like, let's make it absolutely clear what's required.
Right, because every time you say stormwater plan, to me, I hear, what's the mitigation plan? How are you gonna, and I just think, again, for the 1,000th time, you can't do that till you know what you're building. But, so I just asked for clarifying language that you're talking about an analysis from somebody who's licensed to render that opinion, that these are the things you're gonna encounter that will have to be, that you'll need a mitigation plan for. Not, this is the plan, because, you know, the plan is dependent on what you try to put in there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, this is sort of an iterative process too, like, you
Right.
gather the data, you figure out where the stormwater flows are.
Right.
And then you might say, oh, I'm gonna move my lot lines
But,
to make this work better, and then maybe it goes, you know, goes back to the surveyor, they change the lot lines, and then, you know.
but if
Maybe
you
you
just
avoid
say,
having to do.
if
any
you just
sort
say
of-
stormwater plan without clarifying what that means, I think that I mean, I know when I heard it the first 6 times before I finally realized what you were saying, that is expensive or can be expensive to do. But that's part of the price of building a home or.
Yeah,
building a
yeah,
structure.
absolutely.
Right, but just to be clear that there's clarifying language, it's, because you're right, it's iterative. You know, you need to, like in the spirit of the perk test, you know, that's not an onerous amount of money, but it gives a very important piece of information.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's in the spirit of that, only dealing with stormwater to that level.
Right,
And, you know, like this property has a lot of ledge, like I suspect that steep driveway, the reason they haven't graded it already is because there's probably some ledge there.
yeah, it could be.
Wouldn't surprise me.
There's a bunch of it poking out of the road though.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, why don't we move on to another topic here, since we have a lot of things that we could talk about. I guess you know, if people want to write something, why don't we, I'm sure we'll talk about this again before November. I'm gonna draft something, and I guess I'll send it to Kate and we'll discuss it next time we have time to talk about it. What's the next hottest thing here? I guess, Mark, why don't we go through your list and then maybe we'll get onto data centers unless someone's got something more important.
Yeah, so I just jotted down some things that I happened to think of, or some department heads had talked about. The first one on the list is basically adding language to maintain road and access. Currently, we have a bunch of stuff in Article 9 that basically talks on how you construct a road and how you construct a driveway, but there's absolutely nothing in there about maintaining that road or maintaining that driveway. So, for instance, 2 things that came up recently with the fire department is Hendrickson Lane basically goes down, it's a long ways. There was a couple that was actually presented to the board about building a camp some years ago, 2 years ago, I think, something like that. We had to go down and do an inspection down there. The pickup for the town, basically, it was scraping on both sides, just trying to get down there. So, we had to draft up a letter, basically, you know, stating that the road needed some major, you know, work in order to bring it up to its standard. The problem that we get into is that there's really nothing in the land use ordinance that basically talks about maintaining what is supposed to be there. It basically talks about it has to be built to a certain standard. After that point in time, then the only recourse that we have for like the fire department, for instance, is NFPA, NFPA 1. And that's one of the handouts that I had that says 18.2 fire department access. Basically goes into a bunch of different things that gives control to municipalities that have adopted NFPA 1, which the state has. In here, there are some things that I've highlighted that I thought might interest the board as far as taking a look at that. So and two things have come up, and one was the Hendrickson Road one. The other one was there was a piece of property that the fire department had to respond to where there was a homemade bridge that went to access some property. And one of the fire trucks, actually, the front tire fell through. And basically, you know, they were able to back it out, but they weren't able to go any further than that. And they had to, according to the fire chief, they had to string all kinds of lines a long distance in order to get to what it was. It wasn't a structure fire, so it wasn't that critical. However, it could be, and if you can't get the apparatus there, it becomes a problem. So there is a section in there as well. I don't remember where it is in that, but basically it talks about bridges as well. It also talks about dead ends so that you got someplace to turn around, you know, the fire apparatus and get it out of there. Where is the bridge portion of it? And then.
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh, in this document. Oh,
Yeah, the 18.2. So anyways, that's one of the things that the fire chief has run into a couple different things. So when we're looking at that, there should be something in there that makes sure that, you know, yes, it's gonna be built to a certain standard. But at some point in time, it can't allow, you know, that road to become, you know, inaccessible.
Derelict.
so
Part of the,
can you explain how the road association agreements are made and then I guess enforced by the code enforcement officer?
so they're not, they're basically the only language about road associations happens to be when they come to you to make a development in a road. Then they have to go through, they have to do a deed, they have to do a bunch of stuff. It's in Article 9. I don't
Yeah, it's
remember the-
9.2.4.
Correct. So that's the only time that anybody has to do anything as far as creating a road association or anything else. After that, it's a free-for-all.
So, well, I mean, you think you don't have the authority to enforce that?
As far as the problem that we get into is that there's nothing that says that we enforce road associations or creation of road associations. And what I wanted to bring up to the board was, is that something that you think is something that should happen? So that everybody has a say and, you know, people pull together in order to maintain their road. And the other thing is that, you know, some of the maintenance issues, yes, we do have that through NFPA 1. But if you're talking about actually adding something to the land use ordinance, I would highly encourage taking a look at some of the language that's in, you know, the NFPA 18.2. And then, you know,
Who's gonna
those
police that
things.
though?
What's that?
Who's gonna police that? There's so many private roads all over town.
Correct.
Who's gonna police it? Who's gonna?
I mean, it ought to be-
We're doing it right now with Hendrickson Road. I just sent out 8 letters to the 8 property owners. Telling them that that has to be brought up to, you know, to the standard. So, and then, but the authority I get from that is NFPA 1. There's nothing in the land use ordinance that basically talks about that. So again, there's a bunch of different things, and if people are looking for information on what it is, well, there's nothing in the land use ordinance that talks about maintenance on roads. It just, it's silent. So-
Well, I think that the document that you could enforce is the road association's agreement about maintaining it. But I agree, I agree that there ought to be some standards, you know,
Right.
like what is the clear width that you should be keeping cut, you know, like all that stuff. I agree that we ought to include some of this in here.
Mark, is there
Because
any,
without a solid metric, like,
Can we just refer to NFPF 1 to say that the according to the town, but it must be maintained to that standard?
yeah, we absolutely could.
Yeah, you
Make it
could,
simple.
but I would be careful of that because, and the reason I say that is if you look at the document that I provided, NFPA talks about a 20-foot wide road as a minimum.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just think that our ordinance calls for, you know, for a basic private road, a 12-foot.
Right.
And I'm not so sure that that's not a doable thing. You can get an ambulance and a fire truck in there and stuff like that. Yeah, you know, it's gonna be a pain if you happen to run into somebody else coming the other way, but at least it's going to give them that access without necessarily costing people an arm and a leg to widen it, you know, from, you know, like there, Hendrickson Lane, that's, I mean, you're talking about widening it from 8 feet to 12 feet, that's 4 feet, 2 feet on either side, just to get it to what it is. I don't even,
The road itself is only 8 feet, or the clear space inside the.
oh, I don't even think, no, that, I mean, I don't think that, because again, I mean, I'm hitting, you know, vegetation on the way in on both sides at the same time, so, you know, how wide is a pickup truck?
Wood
So,
road.
I don't
Yeah,
mean to
it's
sound
not bad.
negative, but you send letters.
Mhm.
Is there any enforcement? Like, can you find them? Like,
No.
what is the
Well,
enforcement? Cause like
the-
we can have it, but if there's no teeth to it, it's just another thing in the land use ordinance.
Correct, so there's, again, our authority comes from, or the town's authority comes from NFPA 1. So
But
we
if we
have that,
added something-
but I don't,
If
it would be a little bit more difficult for the select board to fine somebody based on NFPA 1 versus, even though the state has adopted, you know, NFPA 1, you know.
I guess my question is, we can add anything to this document, but if it's not going to be enforced, like what is that enforcement gonna be? Cause then it's all bark, it's no bite. Like what is, you're not gonna maintain your road, this happens, like fines?
Yes,
Okay.
Mark, do you have a schedule where you go out or some department and checks these roads? I mean, so how do you just wait for a person to complain about us, like a bridge? I mean, that bridge thing scares me because
correct, that,
who's responsible for knowing the structural integrity of that bridge?
right, that came from the fire chief. He basically came in after that incident and said, oh, by the way, this happened and this, you know, we need to obviously correct that. So we had a conversation about, you know, the authority in NFPA 1 and, you know,
Yeah.
that bridge has to meet certain standards so that that fire truck can do that. There's height stuff that's in there as well, but the Hendrickson Lane one had to do with, a gentleman was looking for a shoreline zone permit, so I had to go down and do an inspection on that.
Right.
And that's when, you know, I was like, holy crap, I can't get my pickup truck down here. How is the rescue gonna get down there? And the thing that really kind of put it to another level is this individual is talking about having his daughter's wedding down there,
Oh my
80
God.
people.
Oh my God.
So what are the odds that, you know, somebody's gonna have some type of medical event and I don't know if they'd be able to get the ambulance down there. They would have to go get them with a pickup truck. So that's kind of what, you know,
It just
What
seems
we
to me that it's just a problem. You're gonna get I mean, how do you judge the structural integrity of, say, a road? Does someone have a dynamometer and measure how much it can hold? What happens there?
no, so the NFPA document that I gave you basically talks about, you know, like bridges and structural supports and making sure that those are meet certain standards and stuff like that. So those go into play and those you get told to the individual that owns it, and then it's up to
Right.
them to do that.
I
If they
see.
don't comply, then we have to take them to the select board and then, you know, we go down that road.
Should we make it a rule that every 5 years that road has to be certified by somebody, by an engineer?
And then,
Makes
and that's in order for, and if it's not, then fire trucks won't go down it, period. You have fire and you lose your house. Period. I mean.
Well,
I mean, a lot of
Send
people would
fire
take
truck
that
down the road.
bargain though. They'd be like, oh, I don't have to pay a fine and there's just a fire truck, fine, you know,
Yeah,
I
it's
think a
not gonna
lot of people
happen
would
to
just
me.
go for that.
But go for what?
Just not just being like, oh, well, no fire trucks
Well,
down here. then.
and who wants to
Well-
be the person who has to look up if, you know, that piece of information in an emergency, I mean, you know. But what I was wondering is if you have an up-to-date map that indicates all the roads that you are counting in this, like, I mean, I'm sure if you look out there, there are abandoned tote roads and things like that.
Right.
And blah, blah, blah. So you're not talking about those clearly. So in other words, is there a way to clearly communicate to everyone and anyone that all the roads on this map are the roads that need to comply with what's here? Is that clear, or are we discovering roads when somebody asks for something like, can you go down to this old camp?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking you.
Yeah, so that's kind of why I printed off that whole fire department access. Right out of NFPA 1. Because part of it, what it does is it talks about different things on when is it applicable and when is it not applicable. So it gives you some cases down here, provisions, it allows it to be modified where the following conditions exist, and then it also talks about, where is it? Access to buildings. It basically says the road has to go to within 50 feet of, a residential structure so that the fire trucks can get to within 50 feet and then they have enough hose in order to do what they need to do.
Right.
So some of that documentation, that's why I wanted to print that off and give it to you. I'm not sure that a lot of this is applicable, but I think that some of it is, and it might be worth just the board reviewing it and seeing, is there something worth value to, to the town or not,
And Margot, we don't have a map, but we have a list.
Okay,
of
well, that's,
roads. We have a list of roads that are state-owned, a list of roads that are town-owned, a list of roads that are private. So
gotcha.
we have a spreadsheet that
And
has
so
a master list of.
This is the finite group. And so anybody who owns that and is responsible for that would know clearly that.
Well, would they know clear, or should we notify them, in fact, that these private roads are private roads, and if they expect to get any kind of service on those roads, then they have to maintain them to a standard, and let them decide whether they want to do that, to your point over there, I mean, if they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it, but if they might assume that they're gonna come down that road, oh, I wanted to make a difference, right? If it's a fire, but they should be notified that they may not get that service unless they maintain the road. I mean, that makes total sense.
It does, but here's another dilemma that we're faced with. Once we determine that a road does not meet town specifications, don't we have some liability that if we don't take action to force them to comply with that?
But there is certainly, I mean, maybe not in this municipality, but you go out to Colorado or something and there's gonna be houses where you just can't get vehicles into. And is it their right to have a house that's only accessible by footpath or horse or
Right.
seriously off-road vehicle? If I wanna build a camp out in the middle of nowhere,
Yes.
Right,
isn't that your right?
But that doesn't count for driveways. This is for private roads.
Gotcha.
Like they put a subdivision in
Yeah,
private
Okay.
road, not driveway.
so it's a shared responsibility. then.
There should be, whatever ends up happening, there should be some. Asterisks or whatever for. The period of time it takes to repair a road after a storm kind of thing. I mean,
Sure, yeah,
um,
no.
because I know. Where my dad's house was that, I can't tell you how many times he had to call Tony Lash. We can't get out,
Yep.
And so if we couldn't get out, the fire truck certainly couldn't get in. But, you know, with seasonal things, people aren't always aware what winter did to their road until you know, till you get to this time of year and that kind of thing. So I'm just, you know,
Is the town obligated, and maybe Kate, you would know, to send an ambulance and or a fire truck to a road that is not properly maintained? But are they obligated? I know in the hospital where I work at, doesn't matter, whatever. If you come in for medical care, God help you if you don't supply it. So I'm wondering, is the town obligated to send emergency vehicles
Yeah.
even on these roads that are not up to snuff? Or is the town obligated to let those property owners know that their road is not?
Well, that's what I was suggesting,
That-
they should be notified that they need to keep those roads maintained.
right,
And it might be that, I mean, so the town is obligated to respond to an emergency call.
Yes,
Derek and I were having a discussion about the trail we're trying to put in on, at the park, right? At the Madonic River Community Park in the old, Slovenia site. And we're trying to put in a wide trail there. And so the conversation we were having was, we're trying to make the trail wide enough so that he could get an ambulance onto it and around it. To be able to, get to a call if there was a call there. And, you know, he said, well, if the grade is too much in a certain spot, or if we can't get the ambulance down it, we get the ambulance as close as we can, and then we have to go to wherever that is. Right, with the stretcher, with the people, and so that increases the time of the call,
Yeah.
which in an emergency situation isn't great.
which could be a matter of life and death.
well, and
what
this
about
is
signage?
what happens every year, multiple times in the White Mountains, when people
Yeah.
who don't know what they're doing decide to go on a hike and get up to too high an altitude and get into trouble, and, you know, you can't certainly drive to where they are, but that's the penalty that, you know, you're spending a lot of time.
Mark,
Getting
you
to
were,
an
you were talking
emergency.
about liability.
Mhm.
What about signage? You know, sometimes you see roads that have, you know, a sign that says not maintained by the town.
Well, that's what the private is.
Yeah, so some, another piece of sign that says you may not get.
So what I'm getting at is right now in Article 9,
Yeah.
it talks about what a minor road should be constructed to.
Mhm.
Talks about all the dimensions and stuff like that. If the town ignores that, and we know that this place doesn't even come close to meeting Article 9.
Yeah.
And we don't do anything about it and something happens, is the town going to be somewhat liable? Because we knew that this road was inaccessible.
Yeah.
And we made no attempt to try and get them to bring it up to speed. That's where I'm getting with this,
Yeah,
is we, you know, if we have it in our books, then we have to enforce it.
For
So I-
new private roads, there is a provision that says that they have to prove that the town is never gonna be responsible
Yeah.
for it, correct?
Yeah,
It's
responsible for
roads.
maintaining it.
for maintaining it.
For
Yeah,
new private roads,
Yeah.
isn't there a stipulation that they have to prove that the town is never gonna be responsible for
Mean they're
it?
indemnified in some way?
I think you're talking about they're going to, it's going to be classified as, if they want to have the town take over that. And it become a town road, then it has to meet certain standards.
no, there's a specific thing in the ordinance that says the private road has to certify that the town will never be responsible for taking care of this private road.
New ones.
Right, but that's
Yeah.
maintenance. We don't do maintenance to a private road.
I know, but
Right.
is there something in that provision that would deal with this? I mean, for old private roads that were not created under that provision, it's not gonna be applicable, but for new ones, does that change the issue? Like, how do they prove that?
It's not the town maintaining it, it would be.
The town requiring them to maintain it.
Correct.
Right.
And that's what we get back to. It's their
But-
road, it's not ours.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of what Daniel's getting at, is a provision that says that, you know, you set up this private road, you're in charge of maintaining it. The town doesn't have anything to do with it anymore, and that could potentially cover liability for them not maintaining it, because we've said the onus is on you, it's not on the town.
And there is a state provision, I don't know it off the top of my head perfectly, but for new private roads, I believe. that service a certain number of dwellings, the state requires them to have a road maintenance agreement. I don't
Our
know what
land
that
use
number
ordinance
is.
requires
It does?
all
Or
roads to have a road association and an agreement. But yeah,
Perfect.
yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, we've already got that. I think what's just, what makes it difficult is that the standards about how it's going to be maintained are not in the land use ordinance. They are in the individual road associations agreements.
Mhm.
And so it makes it sort of.
It's an honor system instead of.
Well, I
something
mean,
within a-
I think that, like, if the town agrees that we're going to accept the road association agreement, then we're, I don't know, can the code enforcement officer enforce that?
No, what we enforce is
Pretty-
land use ordinance or potentially NFPA. I don't enforce it's like deeds.
Yeah.
We have nothing to do with deeds. We cannot enforce a deed.
Yeah,
Can there be some kind of, language that would like legally, something to the effect of, when you get into, this classification of road that's maintained privately, that some statement that the town will provide emergency service to the extent that they are able to access points on emergency roads. Yeah,
My feeling is, coming from a fire background and stuff like that. My feeling is that a lot of rules and regulations are made because people will do stupid things and right up until the time that a catastrophe happens.
right.
And that's why rules and regulations get put in place. Codes, if you go to codes and you look, they're all because something bad happened someplace. And then they had to correct it and make sure that, people didn't do a shortcut in order to do that. My feeling is this is kind of one of those things, when you got 8 property owners on a private road, that should be maintained so that everybody is safe and, the fire and EMS crews can do their job.
I don't disagree with that. I was just taking a whack at getting at the liability concern.
Right.
Right? And then at that point, I don't know what you do, because I don't know what you can do. Once it's designated that way, I mean,
What do you mean by designated?
well, designated as a private road handled by a private association, I mean.
Can you say that the association needs to maintain the road?
Maybe somebody mentioned a minute ago. Maybe it's that classification of road that has to have a 5-year inspection. So the town and the association is assured that it's the road and any structures, bridges, whatever, have been maintained to enough of a standard to support emergency vehicles. Maybe it's sort of a.
Yeah, to John's credit, I'm not looking to create more inspections and stuff like that. Mine is, when we run across these, there should be something that says the road should be maintained to,
No,
The standard
I
that
get
we set.
that, but
that's all.
But you don't, it's if somebody's house is on fire.
Right.
It would be nice to not wait until the house is on fire to make the discovery that, and if people are doing what they're supposed to do. Probably take 5 minutes out of your day to drive the loop and, this. But it does maybe give you a little standing if you encounter a road that's been really neglected. It shouldn't have to be an onerous thing.
Right, yeah, it's one of those things that we don't go out of our way looking
Right.
for these issues, because there are tons of
Right.
old, like what you mentioned, there's old access roads that were created that have a name, but you go driving by it and it's all grown in, and it's never been used in
Right.
40 years, and it leads to absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Um,
That's,
and-
that's why the owner should be on the property owners
to certify to the town that it's maintained, not the other way around. So we don't have to go out looking to go chasing down these things. They should every 5 years,
Well,
should come to us and say, here, we've had this thing surveyed, it's in good shape, here's the certification for that.
well, I don't object to that, but just sort of something, however you want to place the onus, that every 5 years, somebody has looked at this, whether that activity is generated by the town or generated by the homeowner association. But just like having a health certificate every year in your, in your kitchen at a restaurant, you just have to, I mean, we don't have to be the ones that do it, but somebody has given it the once over, and yes, the bridge is intact and people are cutting the brush far enough away, that, just basic.
I mean, we can definitely do that. The only thing that in code enforcement, one of the things that they try not to do in like residential dwellings, we do a certificate of occupancy on a brand new place. We go in, we do the certificate of occupancy, and we basically give them a certificate that says that it meets all the applicable codes and everything else. The minute we walk out that door, we have no idea what they're gonna do, and we never go back and do another reinspection because it's their own spot and we
Well,
don't invade
But I'm not
their.
talking
Except
about
when
that.
it's sold,
Right.
the buyer usually says, I want an updated C of O, which means that they have to come to you to get that. And it's the same kind of
Yeah,
thing. as
and I'm not
having-
talking about every driveway, I'm talking about the specific instance of a road managed by an association that has X number of minimum number of dwellings on it that trip that. I mean, there can't be that many of those in this town.
As far as private roads,
Well, private roads with at least 3 dwellings down them, I don't know. That is managed by an association or.
well, the problem is that we don't have a lot of associations on these roads. And that's what we get at. But just to give you an idea, this is the actual database for all the roads, and these are all the private ones.
Okay,
Main DOTs in red, yellow is Waldeboro, and the gray ones are all private. So
well,
we have a huge number of roads that are all considered private.
gotcha.
And a road maintenance agreement is not the same as an association.
Right, so let me ask it this way, I'm just trying to be supportive. What would make your job easier?
Just some type of language that talks about the road must be maintained. That's what basically NFPA talks about, and I think that, for the most part, we just need something in there that basically talks about.
Subject
should
to
be-
fine or something like that?
It's
Are you
not-
looking for like a one-liner, like roads must be maintained with the conditions? Like
Correct,
this,
they,
You just
roads,
wanted to
roads must be
say-
maintained so that, whatever the standards are for that classification, that's what the road has to be maintained to. That's the
that's-
simplest thing.
Well, that's easy.
Some of the other stuff, if it gets into like heights and bridges and stuff like that, I can pull NFPA 1 out in order to
Right.
do that, but the biggest thing is that truly there's no specific language about maintaining that.
Well, to me, that's a pretty easy, innocuous
Yeah.
thing to do if that moves the ball down the field a little ways.
Again, I wasn't trying to confuse the board by giving you the NFPA language. I just wanted to show you what else is out there, and
Right.
if you
Yeah.
wanted to have something else in there, you can, but it's totally up to you.
Yeah, nothing about this is about maintaining the roads. This is all just design criteria. And then access.
So simple.
Well,
simple
fire department
sentence.
access is also continuous. It's not just about, it has to be built to the standard. It also has to be, the access has to be continuous.
Do you want to draft a sentence that the next time we,
Again, I'll
Pull all
work with the
these
fire
papers
chief and
out.
see what he wants to,
yeah, and just something simple that gets to the point and
Sure.
gives you a little standing to have conversations with people who.
Yeah, I think most of the rest of this we can put into 9.2.14. With the exception of the last page here about the the gates, I guess the gate design standard is fine, but the other part of this is about. Public officers having access to private property. The paragraph that's late locks, gates, doors, barricades, blah, 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 that have been installed by the fire department shall not be removed. That probably goes someplace else, but,
Well, is that in, are we talking about things like Knox boxes?
That's what that basically is.
No,
We
it's-
have that in there, so.
it's about. Where did it go? It's
You're talking
I
about
can't
like-
stand
like
it. It's
gates?
two-sided printing.
Properties and stuff like that.
No, really, like buildings have been fire damaged that they lock shut. something
Exactly,
like
that's
that.
what it's about.
That's,
It's,
say again, I'm sorry.
Where like buildings that have been fire damaged have been locked shut by the fire warden or fire chief.
Mhm.
That's what the language that we were talking about. That would probably go in a different section of ordinance.
Okay,
Yeah.
the
18
the overarching paragraph is titled Instruction and Control of Fire Department Access Road. And it's about, don't block the roads, AHJ shall be authorized to require installation and maintenance of gates. That type of thing. Oh, that's what this is about. So this is about a gate that's actually controlled by the fire department?
correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That more or less goes to like gated communities or something of that nature. So it's meant to be an all-encompassing type of thing, so it's not a big deal.
Okay, well, that's bullet number 1 at 7:15. Let's pick up the pace
Next
here
one's
on
gonna be
this.
quick. We talked about this once before, somebody had mentioned it to the board, setbacks for ground mounted solar. You want to address that at some point to make it so that it,
What do people want? Like, we have setbacks already. Why don't we think they don't apply to solar panels?
because is it considered a structure? You know,
I would say so,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
you penetrate the ground, so it,
so
What is a
maybe
fence
it should
structure?
be,
pardon?
Is a fence.
we have a
structure?
very robust definition for what a structure
That's-
is.
But that includes walls and a roof, does it not?
Structure, where are we? Anything temporarily or permanently located, built, constructed, or erected for support, shelter. Or enclosure of persons, animals, goods, or property of any kind, or anything constructed or erected in the ground. Term includes structures temporarily or permanently located, such as decks and satellite dishes. Structure does not include fences, poles and wiring, other aerial equipment normally associated with service drops, including guy wires and guy anchors. Subsurface wastewater disposal systems, geothermal wells or water wells.
So I, just in my little world, I can see enough analogous connective tissue between a satellite dish that's, been secured to the ground and a ground mounted solar panel.
Couldn't we
So,
just add
Can't
it in
you-
that
That was
definition?
exactly what I was gonna
Yeah.
say. Yeah, when you. This includes X, Y, Z and,
I think they're specifically
mounted
trying
solar
to avoid including every single object, which is why it's written the way that it's written. If
Well,
it's built, if it's temporary or permanent, then it's a structure, basically, unless it's excluded.
well, it sounds like the clarifying.
I mean, we're
language
talking
here.
about ground mounted, right?
Yeah,
Anything constructed or erected in the ground.
Except for fence.
Except the fence, right?
and yeah, I agree with Daniel. I just,
What if you?
it
put a
would
solar
take 3
panel?
seconds to say comma after
Your
this.
fence is made of-
The satellite dish, ground mounted solar panels. I mean, they're more prevalent than they were when that was written.
Is this an issue you're actually seeing? Like, are people questioning
yes.
if they can be?
Yes, and
Well, because I'm in the
People-
work,
put them as close to somebody else as possible so that they don't.
Know
see
thy
it as
neighbor.
Part of it.
well, and like I live in rural zone and like. If I had a set, I would love to put solar panels 40, 50 feet away from the road. That would be the very convenient spot to put them, but. If they're considered a structure, I can.
Yeah, we have a definition for solar energy system. Why don't we just call it a structure?
Do you have to issue a building permit for ground mounted? So somebody has to get approval, so if they're, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're caught, we have such as decks and satellite dishes
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah, I just throw it in there and then we can move on to
Yeah.
bullet 3.
What about, clotheslines?
Are those poles with wires?
Kinda, yeah.
I mean, what about the ones that are like, look like a satellite dish? Clothes on, do you need setbacks? And they go in the ground.
It's not,
I would make a fierce case about a pole with a wire right there.
that to me is not a can of worms.
The conversations Mark and I have all the time.
All right, what's next?
7.2 construction standards, so basically you talked about NFPA 101. That needs to be changed. It should be changed so that it just reads, NFPA.
What is
As
it?
adopted by the state, because there are 49 different NFPAs that are adopted by the state, and to list out just NFPA 101, that's the total of them from the main fire marshal's office. Well, okay. So we just strike 101 and just put NFPA as, what did I put in here? NFPA as adopted by the state.
Well, that lets it evolve as it will.
Yeah, whatever they
without having
do.
to-
We don't have to rewrite everything or include all the different
The
titles.
numbers change.
It's like state statutes. We don't,
Yep.
we wouldn't list out all the state statutes on stuff. We just,
That makes sense. You can look them up as you need to.
absolutely. They're all published in the state fire marshal's office.
Love it.
Questions about that one?
No, that makes sense.
All right, next one, 7.4. This is one that, Brandon, we got into once before. This is the archaeological standards in the historical district,
Architectural standards?
architectural, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Archaeology.
Yeah.
No, Gigi.
And then basically, I just wrote it out, but I know that, the board struggled once before on, well, what is, how is that? And it basically talks about the intent of these regulations is to allow the use as permitted, in the schedule of uses in existing or new buildings consistent with historic architecture of the district. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's so subjective, right?
I don't know if you want to tackle that one or just move it.
I had a bunch of conversations with Barbara about this back when we had the
Gray?
80 Gray,
80,
yeah, and it's a difficult thing to do, and I just so happened today to have come across in Wiscasset's land use ordinance an interesting way of doing this. They obviously cut and pasted this from somebody else because it isn't in the, it's got little cartoons in it and stuff. But it's an interesting set of parameters to use to assess the design of the building. So the problem with this is that we don't have a standard. 7.4 just says, make it look like other buildings in town. But when you actually ride around the historic district and look at what those buildings look like,
Brick box?
it's a mishmash of Greek revival and, Victorian and everything else. And like, how do you create a standard for that?
And then there's the sprout block.
And the law.
Well, that's
across the
downtown
street.
business.
I mean, they're
Oh, okay,
brick boxes.
right.
Most of the brick boxes.
That's also not in that district. That's a different zone.
Oh, that's downtown.
Yeah, if you're coming down the hill, the historic zone stops at the Waldo Theater.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I take it
Yeah.
to mean just you're not gonna put like the satellite tower in Washington. You're not gonna build something like that.
Satellite tower. in
What's that
Washington.
called?
Space Needle in Seattle?
The monument.
Are you talking about
Washington
the
Monument?
arch?
No, or the arch, or but in Washington
Washington,
State.
Maine.
Oh, the Space Needle.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're not gonna build like some monstrosity. You're gonna build a house that looks like a house in Maine.
Yeah, so
Yeah, and then we then we had this big retirement home that was gonna be a 36 unit apartment building that maybe will get built someday. And like, how do you take that and make it fit into the district when there are no 3-story buildings in the rest of the districts?
So-
And you can't really
yeah.
make a modern building, especially one that's trying to serve, retirement people who are living on a budget. Like, you can't just go and like, add a bunch of stuff into it. And so we wound up having nothing to lean on there. We basically just said, hey, can you make this look like it fits in a little bit better? Like, instead of having it be just like, I forget what the original siding was, but they came back and said, yeah, we're gonna do, shingles on the top story, to kind of like simulate like the look of a Victorian with a mansard roof on it, with the slate shingles and stuff like that. And it actually came out being sort of okay. So but having nothing to go on at all,
well,
it puts it all onto the planning board to say, no, we're not going to accept your building for reasons that we can't really.
You know, we had this argument,
talk
I
about
can remember very clearly,
Yeah.
and it's extremely subjective. So what I see, what you see, it could be very divergent. What about if we handle it on an ad hoc basis? Would
I-
that be reasonable?
I think that's dangerous. I'm thinking of that used to be probably my favorite house in Waldeboro, and I do like mid-century modern architecture. That home that burned down that was just beyond the historical society. That in somebody like my dad, dad built his house on the lines of the Chapman House, like, Cape or bust. Dad's idea of historical architecture that would fit into that place would not have included a mid-century modern. And yet that was a beautiful building in my humble opinion. And how does that fit into anything? And I guess the building that replaced it, and this is just me, because these aesthetic things, matter to me. When I look at that building, yeah, it's got the, clapboard kind of siding, imitation or otherwise. I haven't gone up close to look. But that is clearly a building that was built very recently. It does not match historic whatever, even though by some people's definition, it would hit that check mark. If I'm having PTSD about this subject, it's from working at Lincoln Academy for 23 years and dealing with the Newcastle situation, which at least while I worked there, these questions were left up to the Historical Society of Newcastle. And what a nightmare that is, because depends on who's on the Historical Society at the time, and not having continuity in something like this. And it's kind of this is a kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of topic.
Do you kick it to forming another committee of other people who have aesthetic?
I
Well, then it's out of our hands.
I would hate to. When they interviewed me for this auspicious position and went through the whole thing, we don't want anybody on the planning board who's got, personal agendas and all that, and I don't. But I said that probably the biggest thing that I would do, the thing that would rankle me the most is treating people inconsistently. And whatever we do on this subject, to me, that's the first thing, is to figure out, either just say nothing. I mean, you can limit heights of the buildings. That's an easy thing to do. I suppose there are a few broad things you could do. You could have maybe a study committee present, do like a little ad hoc committee, have some broad things like that, but if you invite a group of people to be the gods of this is historic or this is not, that is just a giant
And
can of
historic in
worms.
Waldeboro isn't might not be historic somewhere else. I mean.
Well, that's right. There are people who love and appreciate, and when it was for sale, I wish I could have afforded to have bought that house. Love mid-century
Yeah.
modern, but there are a lot of people who just think it's like the worst thing that was invented in architecture. And,
I agree with you.
yeah, and so it's
I
a-
love
That's
that-
more-
and yet, and I know it's now out of
We
the
should give that to-
historic
yeah,
district, but somebody decided to build a sprawl block
Yeah.
and that certainly does not fit in with the aesthetics across the street, you know? I mean, it's just such a, I mean, how do you get out of even having these conversations?
Well, in this town, I mean, as a town, because we've been burned so badly, you know, to the point where it's hampered our town's growth for how long now? That we don't, you know, you have all these beautiful storefronts.
Right,
If you get a window seat, you're looking at a brick wall.
Yeah.
Like that will always hamper our town's growth,
right.
you know, that. So we have been burned.
There is a way to rescue that. A friend of mine and I talked about it over lunch yesterday. If that whole, I've never been in the building, but if that whole main level had been made storefronts and you could put a couple restaurants in there and then it would, what's above it, it wouldn't bother you so much, you
Yeah.
know? It would actually be kind of nice, but
I mean,
It's worth noting that mixed
I don't
use
have to-
development is discouraged by a lot of different codes and regulations. It's very hard to do
Right.
new mixed use development.
yeah,
And that's not in the historic village district zone anyways.
no, I know that,
Yeah.
but it's just. I mean, I get that the whole reason for this conversation is you don't want something like that to happen in and amongst, you don't want somebody to. You know, put a 1960s era pink mobile
I
home
think a
right
good
in the middle.
example, actually, that I think of it, is the post office. They tore down a very nice historic building to build that post office. That's in the historic village district,
And that's a
and
nondescript
it
brick,
does not match any other house on that street.
no,
Oh.
and it's not. It's not, right, it's not an architecturally beautiful, it is what it is. Yeah, I get why it's there, it's just, it's really, really difficult to
what is it?
adjudicate
Oh,
this
standards.
in a way that doesn't
Basically
make
matching
a lot of people unhappy. Yeah,
And this.
Well, to Johnny's
is in
point,
our-
to John,
What's-
that's
what's-
Wisconsin.
Oh, Wisconsin.
To Johnny's point from earlier, like, it should be clear, like, what we're
Mhm.
expecting, and if we had some kind of guidelines about how. Even if we leave it in a situation where the planning board. Has to decide if it fits into the neighborhood or not. We at least have a rubric by which we're going to make this assessment, and that's what Wisconsin
Yeah,
does.
right.
It's kind of an interesting methodology for saying, does this fit or does it not?
I
fit?
think that's the way to go.
And the other thing that I was thinking about with this is like what if we have one that is it's done, someone proposes building a house that's in a historic style, but it's a style that doesn't exist in the town. You
Well,
know,
hence the mid-century modern, right? That's an example, right?
sure, but like, I mean, the historic village is not, you know, they're not 20th century houses. You know, so like we could say something like this has to be, you know, of an architectural style that existed, you know, in New England between 1750 and 1900 or something like that. You know, so you won't build a mid-century modern house in that period, because
Even
that
though-
didn't show up until.
But also.
1940s.
Even
also
though somebody did.
In Waldeboro, I mean, because, you know, somebody comes in and says, well, I wanna make, you know, this brutalist concrete. Thing, well, it's
Sure.
historic. you
Meiji
know?
restoration house that was built during that same time period.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, it would be good, I guess,
Japan.
I don't think this is
Yes.
something that you
Meiji
can
restoration.
solve here tonight. But I think the right path is a bullet list or a rubric of some basic guidelines. I mean, start there with like the overall size of the
Yeah.
footprint, the overall height of the building. It has to have a pitch roof, blah, 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 blah. And do some research and maybe on how other people get around.
Yeah.
I mean,
Check this.
honestly,
Yeah,
honestly, the little drawings
I
are
mean-
kind of awesome.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's-
maybe you have two or three people you know,
because it,
get together and draft that and bring it back.
Maybe you tell them what they have to have and not tell them what they can't have initially. Give everybody some wiggle room.
One idea,
Yep.
the Maine Historic Preservation Commission has a whole section on ordinances that they help with. I'm wondering if getting their advice, for examples,
Is that who he works for?
Isn't it Willy Wonka on Main Store?
This is actually a really nice document.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it might be.
I mean,
I think he is.
why not this?
It's a better way of solving this problem than I have seen in the past,
I-
without
I-
getting into like, your house supposed to be white, yellow, or blue.
Right.
You know, it must have this
Exactly.
type of shit.
Because we're not a
Yeah,
homeowner
because it talks
association.
about size, massing, height, blah, 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 blah. And,
And breaks it down in really clear little drawings,
yeah,
that.
right.
So it's
This, and this is
not a bunch of
actually,
just words.
this
that
is
are
actually the
jargon.
kind of stuff that if, you know, having done a lot of stuff on campuses, that this is where the architect starts, is here's
yeah.
all the buildings on
Mhm.
campus.
Yeah.
You know, what, we want to build this building, and we don't want it to overwhelm everything on campus, so they do exactly this kind of analysis. And then you can always have that, if somebody comes up with something that doesn't fit in here, they can always bring it here. You know, like leave ourselves that little
Yeah, right.
discretionary ability to make an exception if we think it fits the spirit of the intent.
Yeah.
Why? I think we should use this.
Okay. Super.
So that goes, my next one was the visual compatibility, which goes hand in hand with that one as well, so
Yeah.
that takes care.
That's excellent.
And I don't wanna keep you guys here all night. Things just to think about. One that it vexes me and people asking me all the time is the shipping containers as far as visually screened, what does that mean? And to be honest with you, I think if I asked everybody in this room, everybody's gonna come up with a different version of what that means. I just think it needs to be better defined, whatever you guys think.
Is that already in the ordinance?
That's how it basically says that it has to be visually screened. If it's a shipping container, it has to be visually screened from neighbors. But it doesn't say how.
So,
It
so
just says visually screened.
do we delineate between temporary storage containers like that you might find on a construction site that will go away when the project is finished, from shipping containers that just take on a life of their own and never seem to,
Correct. So shipping containers they are a structure and they are permitted and they have to meet all the setbacks and everything else.
right?
But with that, we've opened them up to, I think, every zone with the exception of industrial and residential. Those are the only two zones that they're not allowed in. And if they are allowed, then it has the language in there about visually screening and it just either do away with it or define what visually screening is, because I'm having a hard time trying to.
Yeah, well,
know,
and then to complicate things, shipping containers are a legitimate lower cost
Yes.
form of building housing these days.
Well,
You're
it's
not
not,
talking about actual containers that are used for shipping. You're talking
Yes,
about
no,
somebody drags in one of those metal things to
those are shipping
build
containers.
them.
No, they're not,
Or
they're
to
not,
store hay, or to store.
correct. They're for
lumber.
storage, 99 times out of
Right.
100, they're for storage. Because you can convert them into residential,
Okay,
but it
let me
would
ask
cost
you
you a
this.
fortune in order to do
What
that.
about the pods down at the storage place? Would those
Great
fit
question,
as shipping,
but
Those are shipping containers.
even though they move, they're,
they're temporary.
If they're temporary, that's one thing, and it defines that in the ordinance, but if they're permanently set there, then they are, like, for instance, there's a person that was up on Chapel Road, and, the person uses it in order to store their hay, it's fantastic for that, because it, you know.
Right.
It keeps the water off from it, and it works excellent for that type of thing, for the horses.
Keeps rats
So,
out.
what's that?
Keeps rats out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of different uses for them and
Exactly.
people are finding that they're nice, but That was the one thing that, you know, I've had people ask me before, and I'm kind of shrugging my shoulders trying to figure out what is visually screening, so. If you guys just could find out and give me an idea what you think on that.
Where, can someone remind me where we have the screening language?
10.23.2.6.
Yeah, but this, isn't there a section that's like in the performance standards maybe?
Oh, it's in section, Article 7 has screening language in there, but I don't know if that's applicable, but it would be worth reading.
And when we're saying screening, is it? I want it screened because it's within so many feet of my property line or my
Yeah.
residence? Or is it out in the middle of a field and on principle, I don't wanna look out to that field and see that thing sitting
So
up
if it's
there?
in the woods,
I'll see you guys.
if it's in the woods and it's visually screened so the neighbors can't see it, that qualifies, I would.
Well, I'm not talking about being visually screened, I'm talking about like your hay is for horses example. You know, maybe there's a 25-acre field and it's kind of up on the rise and it's in a place that's convenient for the farmer. And you can see it, you drive by it, but it's, you know, I mean, I guess for me, it would be different if it were. You know, I could throw a softball and hit it from my front door, right? Is there anything about that or no?
It just says, it has to be visually screened. And that's why it's just one of those things that it just needs to be better defined or removed. I don't care,
Yeah,
but it's just very difficult.
How do you determine when it stops being a movable temporary container and becomes a structure? Like, is there
Perfect.
some standard? Because, I mean, if it's assumably over 100 square feet, you need a building permit.
This
Do you
is,
need a
this
permit
is
to
in
drag one of
the,
these in?
this is in the permanent section of the shipping container section, so this does not apply to temporary.
I know, but how's that determination made? I'm thinking of as a person in town, if I dragged a shipping container in, how do I know
So
when
it
it
talks-
switches?
It talks about, in Article
Is it
10,
in
if you
there?
go
6
through and
months.
read that, it
6
doesn't
months.
talk about the temporary and
Okay,
it's like, you know, oh, if you're moving and you had a pod that you put on your property and you're gonna be loading it and it sat there for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever, it's not a problem. However, if it's gonna be a permanent fixture, you know, and then there are some places that do that, that's what the
okay.
differentiation is. I know it's getting late, just two to kind of take a look at tiny homes, it probably should be changed in 10.36, that's the last one, shall conform to state and federal regulations on construction. Those change fairly frequently as far as that goes, but the tiny homes, we shouldn't pigeonhole those into NFPA versus ASME or whatever it is for standards and stuff like that.
I don't understand what you're saying here.
So
What's the problem that you're trying to solve here?
So the problem is that if you look at 10.36, and I'll pull it up, it talks specifically about the standards that are in there. Tiny homes must comply with American National Standards Institute standards A 119.5 on plumbing, propane, fire. Get rid of that stuff because what you're doing is that these codes and stuff like that change all the time.
too specific.
Exactly, and it's just, you know, right now there are 3 different places that I need to go to in order to interpret the different types of tiny homes. And, you know, some of this stuff just does not apply. So, and again, that's probably the best way is
Well-
it's too specific.
I thought that we added this based on state statute. Isn't that where we?
You
lifted
might have
this
at one
from? 'Cause
point in
none
time,
of
but I
us
know
know
that-
anything about these. We wouldn't have put those in
Right,
there.
but the problem is that it's like everything else, the state standards have changed. So some of these are still are relevant and some of it is not. You have tiny homes on wheels, which are a total different thing, that require a VIN number and a different set of regulations. You have tiny homes that are built as structures, which fall under the main building codes. So again, get rid of the standards because you just
Okay.
refer it to the state. state and federal guidelines of whatever the construction is, and that's what it's gonna be. As they change it, then we will, conform to that. We don't have to worry about rewriting it and figuring out what the language says.
So you're talking about all of from 10.36.1 all the way to 10.36.3?
No, basically, it's,
Just 10.36.
well, the municipal inspections, that one too is kind of difficult because if it's tiny homes on wheels, then we cannot do a municipal inspection on that. And then there's other guidelines that the state has in state statute when it comes to even built tiny homes as far as what we can do as far as inspections and stuff. It's very convoluted. We've tried to get the state to clarify tiny homes because it's a manufacturing board wants absolutely nothing to do with tiny homes. The state, has just kind of written a bunch of stuff that it changes all the time with building codes and stuff like that. So my feeling was if you would at least just change that first one, 36.1 to safety standards, I would either get rid of it or just say it's going to conform to state and federal regulations, then call it good.
On tiny home
On
construction.
tiny homes only, yes. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's
I would
already-
just, it sounds redundant, but I would just say shall conform with state and federal regulations on tiny home construction, because that may be a little different than.
Well, it's under tiny homes. That whole section
I
is tiny homes.
I understand
so-
that, but which regulations on construction are we conforming to? I mean, you might as well just be clearer, right?
Right, it's gonna be state and federal regulations,
Right, on tiny home construction,
correct.
not state and federal regulations.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah,
Right, right,
yep,
on commercial construction, or,
right.
Right, just-
Well,
I mean, that just makes it crystal clear.
Yep. And the last thing I had on my list was just language about mobile home parks. We had a laundry list of things, I'm sure you probably are aware. But we've had neighbors complaining about like a mobile home park and visually screening and problems with that. And if they planted trees and the trees are no longer there because they died 10 years later. You may want to just review that section and see if there's something, that,
Well, what are we trying to do?
well, is that enough to satisfy like neighbors and stuff like that? Should we be putting fences up in order to visually screen for neighbors? Are there other things like if the planning board says that, we were supposed to plant trees, do we say that, okay, the trees have to last 5 years, 10 years?
Indefinitely.
Yeah, I mean,
If the trees die, you plant a new tree. That's
We didn't
pretty straight ahead.
address that, something similar in the language around the cell phone tower.
Yes.
Yeah,
We
Yeah.
can just
maybe we
copy
want to borrow
paste.
Perpetuity.
whatever that language was.
we came out of the shoreline zone language where it has to last for 5 years and 80%.
Right,
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we said we made it more restrictive than that.
Yeah, we did.
Could be,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
but
it was
that would
based-
give some continuity.
Yeah, so we should add that into the screening section. In 7.1.2. Okay. Yeah, screening of the mobile home parks. What does it require now? Do we have a requirement?
no.
I mean, normally we
it's at the
don't.
Section 10.
Is it,
10.20.
does it vary from mobile home park to mobile home park?
Yes, based on when it went
Was-
through the planning boards,
that's what
stuff
I-
like that.
Right, that was my
And
guess.
then it's been, some parks are fantastic. They're
Right,
great, and then others aren't, and we have some very, very upset neighbors.
well, there's, of course, the park next to Hannaford, which has been there my whole life.
Yes,
And I'm suspecting that nobody said boo about screening when that was put in there. and not an easy place to figure out how to screen at this stage, right? So.
Well, one of the things that the town manager had said, as kind of a suggestion on some of this stuff is, should a mobile home park, if they wanted to open up a mobile home park in the town of Waldeboro, should they have a list of rules and regulations for their park that they should present to you, the board, you know, to determine whether or not that is adequate in order to maintain that park? That was her suggestion, you know, again, I don't, you
Yeah.
know, I'm just.
Well, I guess the reason I brought up the mobile home park by the Hannaford is. Somehow, whatever it is that you write about screening has to reflect the fact that. You know, that it's consistent with whatever was agreed to at the time of. The
Correct.
building of the
Right.
park, right?
Right.
That you can't,
Nothing is retroactive.
right,
It
Right.
would, anything that gets put in the land use ordinance would only apply to new parks coming before the board.
right. And I don't know if you need to have clarifying language around that or not, or it's just assumed.
It's the same.
And some,
It's the same with anything. Some, like if there's a non-conforming lot that was happened before we instituted these ordinance, it's allowed to remain. So it's anything that happened before.
somebody left their dreams. Yeah.
So our current requirement is a 25-foot vegetated buffer strip. It says, a continuous buffer strip on an existing wooded area not less than 25 feet in width shall be required. Shall contain evergreen shrubs, trees, fences, walls, or any combination of the above. The buffer strip shall be located along all boundaries of the manufactured home park.
So. Here's a question for you. And this is where we kind of get into some of this issues. When you talk about evergreens, a pine tree is an evergreen. If a pine tree is 35 feet tall and has no
Yeah,
buffering
Yeah.
screening at all, and you can see right through to the neighbor's yard, no problem, is
Right.
that meeting the, so again. That's where, you know, this neighbor in particular is frustrated with a lot of this, is because does it meet the letter of it? I guess so, but it really, it didn't accomplish what it should have.
If
Right,
you add the percentage though,
right, exactly, the 80%,
right?
because then you have to,
You
But it
have
won't
to
matter,
figure
if you
out-
have a bunch of pine trees, all it says is it has to be evergreens, right?
But if we add a
says-
percentage,
well, the 80%. Like it has to,
visibility,
Screen.
visibility, thank you, screen 80%, that was the language in the cell phone tower,
with that board, what's the board called?
Nuds board.
Nuds board.
yeah. I'm just
I had to look it up, so. that's
thinking
why I
of
remember.
when those pine trees get that big. That I wouldn't want them near my mobile home park, because one good storm and how many houses are you gonna take out? But anyway, that's aside the point.
Yeah, we should adjust that screening paragraph 7.1.2. There is a standard in there, and it says there should be a shade tree at least 6 feet tall, and 2 to 3 inches in diameter. Planted no nearer than 5 feet to the lot line for every 300 square feet of required landscaped area. And a deciduous shrub or evergreen that is at least 18 inches above finished grade level shall be planted for every 200 square feet of finished landscape area. So that's what we've got right now for a density requirement.
You also have 10.16. One, which is a continuous buffer strip for mobile home parks.
Right, yeah, and so, right. So 7.1.2 is within the buffer area 7.1 in Article 7, obviously. So this is directly referenced by 10.16.11. So, you know, if I was gonna build a new park, that's what I would do, is go to 10.16.11, there's a buffer strip. How many plants do I have to plant? 7.1.2.3 tells you what you have to plant. 200 square feet per shrub is a pretty fairly close together amount of screening. But I certainly don't think you're gonna get 80% on a visual estimation board at that spacing. At least not when you first plant them. If it's a 18-inch tall shrub.
Right.
The other topic that I wanted to get into, but we're obviously not going to because we don't have time. Let's adjourn the meeting. I wanted to talk about data centers. Because I think that we really need to put some guidelines together about that. And I found from Urban Land Institute, they have an interesting and fairly middle of the road sort of guide about how to do that. I'll email this to everybody. I learned a lot about data centers. I thought I knew what data centers were. And they come in all different kinds of shapes and sizes, from like the telephone switching facilities that we've got like over by Store Lumber, up to they're gonna build one in Utah that's 600 and something acres. They're planning to have between 4 and 10 nuclear reactors on it
Oh, my God.
to power the thing.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Yeah, exactly. And so, a lot of these data centers are being put into residential neighborhoods because they have the resources that they want. And what they want is ready access to a lot of electricity. So Route 1, we've got the power lines that run through here. And if you're going to build a data center in Maine, you're going to put it someplace where you can find that power, which is why they're talking about putting them at the old Maine Yankee site. They've been talking about putting them up at Limestone Air Force Base. Yep. And the other thing they need is water. And so being a town with a river running through it, with lots of power lines running through it, like we're definitely someplace that could be sited for a large data center. They make a lot of noise because they a lot of times have power generation on site. The cooling systems make a bunch of noise. The machines themselves make a loud droning noise, coming from within the building. They make these buildings with up to a 30-foot deck height. So a 1-story building with a 30-foot ceiling. So they're going to stand out in a rural town. And then a lot of times they have equipment on top of that, so you'll have like cooling equipment on top of the roof. Yeah. So there's a lot to consider there. There's better and worse ways to do it. So anyway, I'll send you this document next time we have a chance to talk about it.
We'll only use the water at night, so it won't.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's places right now where they have sucked aquifers dry, cooling the places. The way that you cool a facility of this size is with evaporative cooling. So you use what's called a cooling tower, where basically you take a loop of water and you run the water through the cooling tower, and the cooling tower has a bunch of sprayers in it, and it sprays the water out, and a bunch of it evaporates, and it cools the water as the hot water becomes cooler. Bunch of you'll have a column of steam that rises out of this thing 24/7, not steam, but water vapor, and then that water goes back in. Well, all of that evaporated water has to get replaced with makeup water, and a lot of times they're just pumping this out of a well in the ground. And there's towns all over America where you open the tap and no water comes out because people with a perfectly good drilled well now don't have any water because it's all being sucked up by these data centers.
Now, you might know the answer to this or not, but if they pump it out of the ocean, can they use salt water?
Generally speaking, no, but you can use salt water to do a different type of cooling.
You'd have to have desalinization, I would think.
Yeah, it's
'Cause you're
super
gonna-
corrosive and expensive, which is
That's
why
right.
they're using well water or municipal water. And another thing that they're doing in some parts of the country, like Southern California, they actually purify the liquids in the sewage. And they have that piped all through the cities because they don't want you using the very precious fresh water to do things like water your lawn. And so this water, which, you know, is clean enough to drink according to any of our health standards, but nobody wants to drink it. It's getting used by these data centers.
And
Yeah.
the function of data centers that large is, I mean, are we allowed to have an opinion about that? I mean, you know what I'm saying, you know, this is to support stuff that, I don't know, in some people's opinion might not do a lot for society to begin with.
There's certainly that argument, and this
It makes
document,
money.
this document, yeah, this document tries to put a happy face on that, and you know, and instead of framing it as, you know, these are the facilities we need to make your dumb AI generated cartoons, you know, it says this is the stuff that
Exactly.
we need to
Right.
provide digital security for you and your family, you know.
So
stuff like that.
six people in America can benefit financially from
Yeah,
this.
there's some of that, but you
Yeah.
know, we all use the internet, and we all rely on this infrastructure, and so like,
Well, yeah, but
yeah, but exactly.
Yeah.
But like, if you're gonna put in one of these giant scale systems, like, I don't think that, you know, a rural Maine town is the place to put it, you know, necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on how rural. it
well,
is, I guess.
I mean, in summary, I think you're right on that we should be proactive about what we say, because as we look at detention centers and we look at data centers,
Yeah.
it's those who are caught flat-footed and snoozing, that's where they wind up. And
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, we just had you know, statewide moratorium get vetoed by the governor,
right.
which would have, you know, bought us a little bit more time on that, but they're coming. So we
Well,
might as
They're,
well,
they're
you know,
trying to make them come, but maybe, well, I guess it was all over. Somehow it works out for the town of Jay in a good way, and I don't know the
bully for them.
details. Right, and I don't know, to your point, there's a continuum of data centers, exactly what the data center in Jay is. Are we using it for AI and Bitcoin,
Yeah,
or
right.
does it have some higher purpose? Who knows?
Right.
All right, well, let's adjourn and go home.